More of those hundreds of thousands of parents of our 1.1 million children will bring. In that vein, Brenda, also as a parent whose children are involved in the public school system today, would you comment a bit on the roles that we as community people, as those concerned as teachers, and most specifically at this point as a parent, the role that we can play in this education for liberation struggle?
Well, the role as mainly for parents, we need to find a way to really, the education really starts with the parents. We have to educate our parents first, because we have a whole segment of the population, particularly, I don't mean to pick on single parent households, but and I emphasize with that because I am a single parent, and raising children and understanding how much you have to be involved, you need to be involved in the struggle for the education of our children. You need to be there and understand, know the structure of the school system, how it works, and how it's really not working in the interest of our children. And once, as a parent, once a parent understands this, and you have no choice but to get involved with a lot of these education activist groups that are out there fighting for our children's educational future, or the lack thereof, the future of our children's education, and so forth. Teachers as well, and that's something that we can do collectively as parents and teachers, as has been done in several groups, teachers and parents working together, because it starts there. That's where the education starts, you know, with me sitting down, well, it's a meeting of the minds of the parent and the educator, because we want to produce the well-rounded child.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's important. I couldn't stress the importance enough, and that's how I became involved, understanding, and kind of one of those parents just like, I'm worried about putting food on the table, paying the bills, doing so, you know, it's just so much happening in life, just living life and trying to make those ends meet, that you kind of get, forget that, you know, this is important. I have to be there to ensure that my child is getting what they need. Otherwise, they're going to get railroaded. And I've seen it. And so we have so many horror stories that we've shared of parents stuck in the system, especially the system that that we look at today, where there's really no help, you know, for our children. There's no one to reach out to deal with the many issues that we're confronted with on a day-to-day basis, and this, I'll say, this miseducational school system that we are under mayoral control.
Right. You know, one of the things that I'm hearing is that the talk of education for liberation, as interesting as that may sound to some of us, may not even be clear, even with the great explanations that we've gotten so far. But one thing that you made very clear, as also you, Benita, is the whole question that your involvement in this struggle for an education that is both your right and your child's right, and one that is excellent, began right with the school that you are located in.
Right.
So Benita, might you say a bit about any of the personal experiences that kind of brought you into this effort that we now call the Education for Liberation movement?
Sure, I can answer that. I want to add, though, that I've been a single mom for a really long time. My oldest child is in her early 30s, and I knew that I had a responsibility and that it was an obligation of mine to make sure that she was learning. But I also had to, as Brenda said, I had to work and provide, and my gut instinct was to find a good school, put her in school, go to work, help her with homework, show up at PTA meetings and when the school called me and all. But basically, education was something that the school was going to do, and of course I would take her places, museums and all that, but my understanding of learning and of being educated and learning math problems and science problems and all, that was really the school's job, the teacher's job, and I wasn't going to tell the teacher what to do. pretty much that was a way of thinking that I had back then. When I had my youngest child, realized that once again I happened to end up in the situation where I was raising my son alone. I recognized that there was that wasn't going to fly anymore, that I just couldn't drop him off at school and keep walking, or just go to PTA meetings. I really needed to be more involved, almost to the point where there was a pushback or a retaliation from the school for my inquisitiveness, my asking questions, that I had to remind them that I had a right to know, that I had a right to direct my child's education, and that I wanted to know what classes he was in and how was he learning, and I just wasn't going to take some blatant answer. And what I found was that the more questions I asked and the more I kept coming up against people who seemed to be well-meaning but in fact had a missionary mentality, and almost as though, because my child is black and Latino, that there was like a conspiracy to keep him from really developing as all of the potential that he had within. I personally believe that every single child is a gift from a higher power, whether you believe in God or Jah or Allah or Jehovah, that children are gifts, and each one of them is gifted. Even the child that may have some severe challenges, physical or emotional or mental, there is something within that child. There are no mistakes with children, and that child is special and gifted in some way, music, art, talent, somewhere. And that the school also has a responsibility, along with the family, but the school also has a responsibility to ensure that the child's potential is not squashed. And that children are learning to their full potential. And I found that particularly once the mayor had control of the governance of the school system, that in fact the potential for children to learn to the best and greatest of their ability was being hampered, was being squashed, and that parents and their voices and voices of concern were of absolute no concern to this system.
Amen. This was one of the most moving comments that I've heard in quite some time. Unfortunately, it's very similar to comments that we hear from parents always. This whole struggle today, one would hope that the people who are in charge of the public education system would be much more sensitive and aware and hearing of the issues confronting us. But that has not been the case. It's been the reason that we've had to come together and struggle.